Hey guys, I haven't done a video in a while and I've been contemplating whether I wanted to do one or not because I've officially left social media. I just decided I wanted to keep a lot of what was going on in my life private, and I have a tendency to get excited and overshare stuff. This video may seem like an overshare today, but I've been thinking about this for a while, and in December I had a few thoughts about it. Um, I'm recording it, but I'm not 100% sure I'm going to release it yet because I've been praying a lot about different things and God has been very quiet. Um, but let me give context. If you've watched my stories and all of my videos and all the things that I've posted over the years, I come from a very abusive history. And for the past couple of years, I have battled finding work. I had to leave my children for 2 years. I have my children back now. But that didn't mean that the doors opened and that work opportunities all of a sudden showed up or any of that. And one of my biggest contemplations over the last couple of years has been why I felt like I was being pushed into a corner. One of the descriptions I always say to people is I feel like I'm the Jonah um, of my situation. Like my life feels like I'm Jonah, and that there were things that I wasn't doing, that I was being swallowed in a whale and just put in one direction to struggle so that I can focus on what it is God wanted me to do. Um, I resonate with so many of the biblical stories. I mean, Jonah's one of them. Job, definitely, because I lost absolutely everything. And what has been interesting to me is I've gone through the motions of really, really panicking and struggling and begging and pleading with God. I have cried in ways that I didn't even know was possible to cry. I have been so distraught throughout the years that I didn't have my children, and now even having them back because we've been at this helm of homelessness for the longest time. That's despite having been homeless myself. But having my children back has kind of given me a new invigoration for life, but that doesn't mean that the doors have opened. But now having them with me makes me a little less distressed because I know they are no longer being neglected or abused. And I can protect them and have wholesome, meaningful conversations with them and talk with them through the things that they had dealt with in the time that I wasn't able to be present in their lives. But I am at a situation again where in 24 hours I have to move. A friend was so gracious. I've prayed for God to bless her incredibly because she allowed us to stay in our apartment in December, and we've been staying in our vacant house now in January. We have until tomorrow to move out, and there is no plan. There's no plan because work hasn't become available to me. Opportunities haven't become available to me, and won't you know the spirit of Jezebel, if you know anything of what I talk about, narcissism, abuse, and the spirit of Jezebel and Baal and all of that is attached to narcissism, would have emailed me today a long email for how I owed them hundreds of thousands of rands when everything was taken from me. Which is so funny. It's because spiritually they understand that we are at the helm of something. I don't know what that something is. But I wanted to do this video because it would be so easy for me to come on here again, like I've done numerous times, and cry and sob and be like, oh my God, why is life so miserable? I have a tendency to do that. I'm not great when it comes to regulating my emotions, and I have a level of activism in me that when something triggers me, I want to talk about it. But for about a year now, I felt the need to step back from social media, from Instagram, from Facebook, from TikTok, and I wasn't listening. And in the last 2 years, I felt like there was a time when God was asking me to consecrate myself to Him, spend more time in scriptures, read the Bible, just really get to know Him as not only a character in my life or as my Savior or my Lord, but as my Father, because I do not have, and my children don't have, examples of what a real father, a loving father who wants to give you everything. We don't have that experience and understanding. And I come to the understanding that the more I spend time with God and the more I understood Him as my Father, the more I experience Him as my Father, where if I'm going through stuff, I can cry to Him and say, Daddy, I need you. And I know people preach and talk about this all of the time, but when you're living it, you really start to see how you were raised versus who God truly is, and how to rediscover God through the window of who He actually is versus who you were taught that He was. I mean, I grew up in church, and because of the way that I was raised in a very abusive household. I was physically abused as a child. I always saw God as my disciplinarian. So my default when things always went wrong was, oh my God, why are you disciplining me? What did I do wrong? What can I do to fix it? I had projected all of the characters, traits that I did with all of the abusive people in my life onto God. So I was trying to strive and fix and do, and I'd get an idea and get excited to do it. And not one of those things, not a single one of them came, brought back fruit, opened up doors that were sustainable, none of them. And I had to start asking myself a question. Last week, I realized that I'm not a very vulnerable person. I come across as really dramatic and emotional or really strong. And I started making my strength part of an altar. So I was strong through everything, and nobody got to see the real me and what it is I was dealing with emotionally and mentally. And that would drive me into a corner mentally every time where I was physically in such an incapacitated state that I couldn't breathe. But then at the same time, I was also worshipping money. If you know what Jezebel, the spirit of Jezebel, which narcissistic people have that spirit in them. If you understand how the spirit of Jezebel operates, she tries to link you to the spirit of Baal, which is worship of money and things and fame and all of those things. And it happens so subtly that you don't see it happening, that eventually, like at the end of my marriage, for instance, I became so obsessed with trying to find money just to survive and started relying on the little bits that I was able to create for myself without relying fully on God. And you know what is interesting about that is, even when I wasn't fully relying on God, He always showed up for me. Yes, I was homeless. I ended up going to homeless shelter. But God was consistent in showing up for me in ways that I really shook me. So one example of that is, it was my daughter's birthday last week, Wednesday. And on Monday, I knew, Tuesday morning, I knew I did not have money to even feed us for her birthday. But it was her first birthday in Cape Town. And I prayed in the shower. I was like, God, it's my daughter's first birthday in Cape Town. She's had a terrible last couple of years. I really wanted to have a gift from you. I really need her to experience the best birthday she can ever have, even in our treacherous circumstances. My son is standing in the window watching me. You can come stand inside if you want to. And won't you know it? Someone gifted us with more than enough money to allow her to experience the best birthday she ever had. It's not locked. Okay, can I report facial meeting and how to say in the middle?
Can I make the live stream?
Not today. We can talk about it next week when we have proper Wi-Fi, baby. I'm busy recording. Thank you. No, it uses a lot of data.
But then can I make a video?
You can make a video. Just okay. So she was gifted with like the best birthday gift. She did everything she wanted to do. She was in heaven. Like, I have never seen my child so happy in her life, because everything she didn't have an opportunity to experience in the last couple of years, she finally had an opportunity to experience. And mind you, it's not like, we went to like a fancy place and we did fancy things. She wanted to do simple things. One of her requests actually was to sit in the library and read for an hour. I mean, who am I raising? But we've been sleeping on the floor for the past couple of months, and what's been interesting about that is my children haven't complained. My children haven't complained about our circumstances. There was one day where we didn't have food the entire day, and we got blessed that evening with food. And my children have not complained about that. They've complained about other stuff, like they want to be on the internet and they want to play on the laptop, and that's the kind of stuff my kids have been complaining about. But the stuff that I have been stressing about, the stuff that God said He would provide for me, the things that He made very clear, is set out for us, are the things I've been stressing about that they haven't even been worried about. And this comes down to safety. And this is the pinnacle of this video. When you come from an abusive background, it becomes almost impossible to see God as a safe person. It's very difficult to trust other people. I don't trust people very easily, and because I can smell narcissism on someone, and I can sense the spirit of Jezebel wherever I go. I'm very very wary with my relationships with people because I can read, and I call myself a seer. I can read their behavior, the things that they say, and literally can tell you verbatim what that person is thinking after a couple of conversations. So I'm always very wary of how close I become to people. But what that did for me in my relationship with God was really put us at a distance from one another, because it was very difficult for me to trust Him. But God is faithful. He brought someone into my life a month ago who is a very good, I would say now she's a mentor, someone who's been teaching me how intercessory prayer, the 3 a.m. prayers, sending me prayers, motivating me, sending me long voice notes. Today she sent me like 7 voice notes just to remind me who I am, how God is setting things up, why He's setting things up this way. Like, she speaks into my spirit exactly where it is I need, and she reminds me why I need to be praising and worshiping God even when I don't even know where we're gonna go, right? God is so strategic that way, and she's been through the same situation that I did. And it's funny, I know her from years back, and we just ended up intersecting in the season. She's been teaching me so much about trusting God, and how important it is for me to learn to trust God, because my biggest issue is trust. Every man that's been in my life has betrayed me, and betrayal is an understatement. If you can imagine someone literally trying to rip your life away from you and then laughing about it because they enjoyed it, and then later finding out last year that the rest of the men in my family were built the same way, it became very difficult for me to trust anyone. But this season has forced me into a corner, and the biggest question I have for God is, why does it seem like there's only one direction you are giving me to go? I don't necessarily see myself as special. I do know, and I'm going to say this clearly, I do know that I'm one of very few people who focuses on emotional awareness and where I am in space, what I'm thinking, where I'm going, processing my thoughts. I'm very, very keen on that. And one of the big things for me is healing. I work very hard at healing the parts in my life that I realize are broken. And this is also one of the reasons why it's been difficult for me to be vulnerable with people, because people assume that when you're processing that you are breaking further, and then they want to comfort you, and how can I say, they don't necessarily have empathy, but then they have compassion, and compassion for a very long time over the same stuff can really become draining. And it's not that they're doing the wrong thing, but most people don't have emotional awareness to understand when empathy is required or when something else needs to be done. And this is just the way the world is built. But from a very young age, I've been the kind of person who's focused on not just reading the room, but reading the people in the room, the environment, and how I am placed in the room, and what my presence, the atmosphere of my presence, my thoughts, and the words that I say are going to impact that room. Look, in hindsight, I can be very noisy, and I can make a lot of noise, and I can throw tantrums, especially when that activation spirit comes up in me. When I feel like things are not right, I have a tendency to be like, I'm going to tell you the truth. That doesn't help me in my life, I realize that. But it's also something that's been healing in me. But what I was saying was, I feel like I've been put at this intersection where there is only one direction for me. And I don't know if anyone else has experienced this. I've spoken to a few people who said, for some of us, the path is so narrow that you cannot walk outside of it. Like, I could have rescued myself from the situation in multiple ways. I could have decided to become an escort, or I could have decided to, like, I had a job in a club for a month. That was not going to work out, but I could have decided to further go into that industry. I could have done multiple other things. But those things I knew in hindsight would pull me so far away from God that I probably wouldn't want to come back, because I'd be so ashamed. And one of the reasons I wasn't going to stick there was because shame and me are not friends. I don't do shame. I don't do secrets. I don't do, pretense. Like, it's something that just makes me want to throw up. But it's besides the point. I kept asking God, like, what is this intersection you have me in where it feels like all the doors have closed around me, all the opportunities to move in the direction I feel like I should be moving in have choked up, around me, despite the fact that I have years of PR and marketing and content creation experience. I know a wealth of information about narcissism. And in the last few months, I've learned a lot about family altars, about the spiritual impact of narcissism, and how that gets passed down through family systems, and that there is always someone in a family system who is at the pinnacle of breaking the cycle. And if you choose to go that route, you have to prepare yourself to walk through hell. I've learned so much about that. But it gets very frustrating when you feel like this is the only area you're allowed to walk in. Like, God will rip away everything. Everything you think you can focus on, He'll be like, no, I want you just here. And I haven't gotten fully to the answer yet. I have been prophesied over a couple of times, specific things that I'm not going to share here, but it's brought me to the point where, even though I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, I don't know where we're going to live, I don't know how this is all going to work out. I spent the night really sitting in my fear, waking up at 3 a.m. and praying in tongues, and then this morning trying not to let the fear overcome me. And then had a few conversations with people, not conversations necessarily, but just sharing where I am at honestly, instead of masking it like, us strong people like to do. But what that has done is made me feel a little bit more at peace. Because even if we do end up on the street, which is highly likely not going to happen, but if we do end up on the street, the only conclusion I've ever come to for any of this, and I came across the scripture this morning, and I don't know why it keeps coming to me, is Jesus crying in the garden, saying to God, please take this cup from me, but if it's your will, then let it be done. I'm actually feeling that in my spirit now. That is something I've prayed for the last couple of years, and I didn't know what I was praying. Just be careful. Didn't know what I was praying, because you have no idea what is set up for you and what lessons you have to learn in those hard seasons. But I'm at a place of peace because, number one, I am God's child. I'm not just His servant. I'm His baby, His baby girl. He's the only version of a true father that I've ever experienced. He's the only version of a true father my children have had an opportunity to experience, and they've experienced him in wonderful ways in the last 2 months. My son said in the first few weeks that we were here, he loves Cape Town because the people are so nice. Because everyone has treated them with such kindness, and with such love. My children don't know that expression of love, that expression of, I don't need you to do something for me in order for me to do something for you. And I'm learning in the season of my life that God is not transactional. The abuse and the association with narcissism and Jezebel will teach you that love is transactional. And I'm learning in the season that it isn't. And I'm learning that. It's so interesting. I would do absolutely anything for my children, and I have. There was a time when I felt like God was saying to me, you need to sacrifice your children. And I was like, okay, fine. It hurt, but I didn't know what that meant. I mean, God gives you words in parables, so it's not like you figure anything out. But I realized that because I am able to do and willing to do absolutely anything for my children's health, well-being, safety, and emotional safety, how could I possibly think that God wouldn't want to do the same thing for me? My daughter, I can tell, is a little bit stressed. But I think in the last few weeks, they've seen God show up in so many amazing ways that it has made them step back and be like, you know what? God and my mom have this. Because I've said to them, talk to God. He is your ultimate father. He's the one who's going to provide for you. He's the one who said He will provide for you. And my son said to me in December, when I didn't know when we were going to move to there, and he said, um, came to ask me something, and I said, I can't think about that right now because I'm really just thinking about where we're going to go. And he said, Mommy, you were the one who said to me that we mustn't worry about what's going to happen because you're going to handle it. Now you were telling me this, so you're telling me that I should be worrying about it, and it snapped me out of my state. And I needed to remember my job is to help my children feel held and safe. I'm not going to be able to protect them from everything in the world, but my job is to help them feel held and safe and heard so that they don't have the same trust issues I had growing up. And I'm learning that with God, I have that same thing. I'm trying to deal with this mindset that I grew up with and this mindset that I had while I was married, and I was told repeatedly that it's because I'm not enough, or it's because I'm broken, or it's because I don't know what I'm doing, and it's because I'm not working hard enough, then I don't deserve God's love. That thought has plagued me for years, because I've learned from every relationship I've been in with my family and in my marriage that I needed to perform in order to receive love. When God does not, He doesn't function like that. He's not a transactional God. He's not a God who expects you to be perfect or to expect you to break your back in order to receive His love. His love is freely available. And if I need to experience that love, like David said, in the pits of hell or in the highs of heaven, I still have it. The only thing I need to do is accept it and receive it. And that's what we had the hardest time doing, right? Because of our life experience and because of the things that have happened in our lives, we have a tendency to put barriers in front of experiencing God for who He actually is, based on what we've been taught and the belief systems we've developed through our upbringing and our relationships and all of that. When that is so warped, and that is exactly the enemy's plan, to separate us from God, because the further he can separate us, the more he can pull us into the world and pull us into the things that it is he wants us to do and not achieve our purpose. But despite that all, God is always calling for us, and we just have to tap into the place of where He is calling for us. We have to tap into the place for where He is saying, my child, I love you regardless. Regardless. And I do not need you to perform for me to love you. Love is not transactional. Love doesn't mean I'm giving you things, money, or open doors. I left social media, and I was also wary for doing this video because of my transactionality. The habit that I picked up, that, and this understanding that I picked up, that if I do something on social media and people see how clever and intelligent and wise I am and how much education I have, even though I don't have a degree yet, that it's going to translate to work opportunities and speaking opportunities and bring in the money that I need to live my life. That was my thinking pattern. And this month, that thinking pattern has literally been snipped in 1,000 pieces. So I'm talking openly about it here and keeping myself accountable, because that is not why I'm doing this. I'm actually doing this video so that I can go back and look at it, look at myself in the state that I'm in financially, which is less than broke, in the physical world, not in the spiritual realm. I am single, which, to be very honest with you, I'm very comfortable with. So there's that, because wow, who's got time for all that? And I am unemployed. My businesses haven't worked out. My coaching hasn't worked out. The opportunities have not come. I've applied for thousands of jobs, and this is a reality I can sit in and swallow myself up in. We have to move out tomorrow, and if we're sleeping on the side of the road, then, I've been sitting in the last couple of days, and it's been so easy for me for the last couple of years to sit in those things which to me feel like reality in this realm of the world. But the reality is very different, because what I've come to find, and through the people who have mentored me in the last couple of years, shout out to Yasmin and Tiffany, that I am more than who it is you see here. I am more than what it is people have made me out to be. I've been called all sorts of things. I'm crazy, I'm delusional, I'm making up stories. I was verbatim told that I was selfish by my family, and like all the things. And then someone in December called me Jezebel. my mother to be specific. And I take all of these terms and I wonder to myself, if I have to keep believing all of these things that you people have said to me over the years, calling me disgusting and all of those things, I then submit myself to the ideology that I am those things. But there's no way, I don't believe, there's no way God would have kept me alive for this long through all of this hell that I've been through if there wasn't something else. I don't fully know what that something else is. And I'm still probably going to discover it. But I know the only way I'm going to do that is through prayer and supplication. And I've recently started training myself to fast properly. I'm not all the way there yet. It's a work in progress. But I found that the more time I spend in the Bible, my son has this amazing Bible. I'm just enjoying spending time in it. That I'm starting to discover that it's not only just wiping the slate clean from the things that the people have said that I've started to believe over the years, but what it's doing is slowly transitioning me to understanding who I am. And if I know who I am, my purpose becomes part of the plan. I've always said to God, like, I'm one of those people who miss things. Please give me a deer in headlight sign. Because I want to be told to my face, because I had trust issues. But with God, He's shown up so many times for me. I shouldn't have a reason not to trust Him, and although I battle with that every day, but at the same time with God, simply because we exist, we should trust Him. Simply because He could blow one wind and smite you off the face of the earth, we should simply just trust Him. And we get in the way, as humans, we get in the way of what it is He actually wants to do through us. We get in the way of the anointing that is bestowed on us. Our minds that we think we're so intelligent, humans, I'm including myself in that we get in the way of God's purpose for who it is He wants us to be. So, from all those things that I said, I'm currently struggling with in this reality, in a spiritual reality, I am finding edification in my spirit. These 3 AM prayers are actually quite interesting because I didn't realize I had fears for nighttime spiritual stuff. I had no idea until I started doing it. Walking around in the dark at night scared me. And one night I laid on this floor. The house is vacant, so I laid on this floor and just prayed in tongues. And I realized the reason why God wants you to move closer is because His presence replaces any fear. And I can feel that shifting in my life. I don't know how that's going to translate to the things that we need on this planet, but I can feel that shifting in my life. And the only reason I'm able to coherently share this message, despite crying for the last couple of days, just in utter pain, because I'm like, I want to make my children feel like I'm not trying to figure things out last minute. And then having to remind myself that God literally took everything out of mine so that I can fully rely on Him, which is literally, for someone like me who likes to be independent, is very scary, okay? And who relies on the work of my hands, because I work very, very hard when opportunities come my way. It's just the peace. You know, they talk about the peace that surpasses all understanding. I just have a peace. And I hope it lasts throughout the night. I hope it lasts into tomorrow for whatever might come. But that's the point, right? We deal with these tensions all the time. Tim Ross talks about dealing with tension. And it's through him that I understood that 2 things can live in the same space. Like, if you were abused, you can love your abuser and hate what they did to you at the same time, and hate who they've become because of the spirit of Jezebel at the same time. Through a few dreams this week, I have come to acknowledge that tension is just a part of our lives. And although I live in the tension of not knowing what our tomorrow is going to look like, I also live in the tension of knowing that I have an ultimate provider. I have a father, I have a daddy, and in Malachi it says that He is my husband. Hence the reason also why I'm not interested in dating, but side note. Yeah, I wanted to share that because I also want to look back at this in a couple of years and be like, God brought me a long way, you know? God really brought me a long way. Um, and whatever he's planning to do, I know will probably shock me because when I ask for surprises, he really surprises me. But I'm learning what real love means. Um, and if he loves me enough to keep me going through this, it means he loves me enough to see me through it. Even though a lot of the time it feels like I'm so far away and he's so far away from me. Today I feel him with me. Um, and it's put some of my fears at peace. But I do know that there's nothing I can do to rectify this in my own way. I've dealt with all of the spirits that have tried to come for me because there's a lot happening in the spiritual realm, people. But that's a video for a different day. But this is also why I stopped teaching on narcissism, because I realized that my focus was so much on the person. It needed to focus on how that person became the way that they were and dealing with the spiritual elements that impact narcissistic people and the people in their lives. And understanding that those things, when you deal with in spiritual warfare, God has given us authority over them. And I'm hoping that's what my 2025 looks like. So I've had a mantra sheet. I don't have it yet. I think it's in my Bible, where I've been confessing since December that me and my kids will have a home in December, in January, fully furnished, school uniform for all of them, and all their school needs met. That we'd be able to travel, that we'd be able to heal as a family. I stand by those things because whatever God wants to happen on there will happen. And I've been listening a lot to one of the podcasters who's talking about the words that we use and being very mindful of what it is I say. So even though you may look at me and there's nothing that I have, I do know that God has given me the authority to take over the season of my life, whatever that looks like. And despite the fact that many people who've known me over the years have their own thoughts and opinions, I've come to the place where I realize that their opinions don't affect who God has made me to be, because they aren't God. And because they'll never know the whole truth. They have made the truth what it is that's easier for them to accept. And God has validated me directly twice by telling me, I see you, I see what you've been through, and what you've been through is real. That was more than I needed. That was someone to, if anyone needs to believe you, it's God. You're not crazy when that happens. So yeah, hopefully I'll look over this video and be like, you were starting to walk on the right path. And make the right choices and listen to the Spirit of God. So yeah, see you on the flip side.